The Count jokingly asked the poor maid for financial advice, and her answer left him speechless. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The first bell rang in the servants' corridor, and Lucia Moretti tightened the knot of her apron as if that could steady her heart. "Move, girl. The guests will not wait for your nerves," Marta hissed, brushing past with a stack of folded napkins. "I am moving," Lucia answered quietly. She was. Her hands were quick, her steps light, her mind counting plates and chairs as if she had done it 100 times. But she had only been in the Bardi household for 3 weeks, and already she knew this evening was not like the others. The whole house vibrated with an urgency that had nothing to do with food. Carlo, the butler, strode through the corridor with a list in his hand and a frown that never seemed to leave his face. "Lucia," he called, "the silver in the small dining room, check it again." "I already—" She stopped herself and lowered her eyes. "Yes, Signor Carlo. Do not argue. Tonight nothing goes wrong," he said. His tone was brusque, but his eyes held a shadow of something else. Worry, fear. She nodded and hurried away. In the small dining room, the silver gleamed under the lamps. She did not care much for silver. It did not feed hungry people. It did not keep rain off vines. But she counted anyway. 12 large spoons, 12 small, 12 forks, 12 knives. No chips, no stains. Her mind, trained by years of adding and subtracting harvest crates, worked faster than her hands. One guest had confirmed late, she had heard. There would be 13 at the table. 13 settings, 12 sets of silver. She stepped back into the corridor and almost collided with Carlo. "Signor Carlo, forgive me," she said. "There are only 12 sets. For 13 guests." He froze for a second, then checked his list. 13, he muttered. "Of course. The Baron decided to bring his nephew. Are you sure? Did you count properly?" "Yes," he sighed. "The Count will notice if one place is mismatched." Lucia tilted her head slightly. "There is the old set in the sideboard. It's not as fine, but if you mix pieces, not all at one place, no one will see. One knife here, one spoon there. They will be talking, not counting." Carlo stared at her longer than the question deserved. "How do you know what they notice?" he asked. "People talking at a table never look at what is in their hands," she said simply. "Only at each other." He gave a short, surprised snort. "Very well. Do as you suggest, but quickly." She moved and he walked on, still muttering. Lucia heard fragments of his words. Bills. Letters. If only the harvest— Then his voice was gone. In the great hall, servants were already lighting the chandeliers. The air filled with smells of roasted meat and herbs. Lucia passed by the open doorway and glimpsed the long table, the white cloth falling like a calm river among storms of silver and crystal. She also saw him. Count Lorenzo Bardi stood near the fireplace, speaking with the steward. He was not in his finest clothes, but everything about him spoke of ease. The way he leaned one elbow on the mantel, the way his hair fell slightly out of place, as if he had run a hand through it too many times, the quick half-smile he gave when the steward said something. To Lucia he seemed like the men who had once visited her father's vineyard, discussing land with careless confidence. Yet tonight there was something strained in that smile. His fingers tapped the marble, then stilled when he saw Carlo approaching with a folded paper. "Another letter?" Lorenzo asked quietly. "Yes, signore," Carlo replied. "From Florence." "Later," Lorenzo said. "Not tonight." "Signore, it is marked urgent." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. He took the letter, slipped it into his inner pocket without opening it, and looked away. "Tonight, I am only a host, Carlo. Tomorrow, I can be a man with problems." Carlo hesitated, then bowed. "As you wish." Lucia went on, unseen, carrying a tray of glasses. But she had heard the words, and in them she recognized the sound of a man building a wall around his own fear. By the time the first carriage wheels rattled in the courtyard, everything sparkled. Servants lined up, their faces neutral. Lucia took her place near the sideboard in the dining room. She would pour wine and clear plates, nothing more. That suited her. The closer she stayed to the shadows, the safer she felt. Voices began to fill the air. Men greeting each other with loud familiarity, women laughing with a practiced softness. The names meant little to Lucia, but she remembered them anyway. Marchese di Valenti, Baron Rinaldi, Contessa Bianca di Fabri. That last name made several servants stiffen. Marta leaned toward Lucia. "Careful when you pour for her," she whispered. "She notices everything, and she likes to complain." Lucia nodded. Then another voice joined the rest, smoother, with a touch of calculation. "Signor Ricci from the Banco Toscano," Carlo announced. "A banker," Marta breathed. "No wonder the Count looks like he swallowed a stone." Lucia looked toward the hall. She saw a man of middle age with neat hair and a modest coat that still said money to anyone with eyes. His gaze traveled quickly around the room, as if he were assessing not only the paintings but the stones behind them. Count Lorenzo greeted him with warmth that sounded almost too bright. "Signor Ricci, you honor my house." "Your house is a jewel, Count," Ricci replied. "I always enjoy seeing how well some investments flourish." Lucia turned away and focused on the table. Investments, flourish. Pretty words to cover the sound of coins falling into the wrong hands. The guests were seated. Carlo called for the first course. Lucia moved with the others, placing plates, pouring wine. She kept her head bowed, but she listened. She always listened. At first the conversation was easy. Weather, opera, a scandal in Florence about a lady who had run off with an artist. The men laughed. The women smiled tightly. "So, Bardi," the Marchese di Valenti said after the second course, "I hear this year's harvest was mixed." Lorenzo lifted his glass. "The earth is generous, the sun less so. It balances in the barrel." "A poet's answer," Contessa Bianca remarked. "But your wine always speaks for itself. I'm sure the bank has no complaints." Lucia stole a glance at Signor Ricci. His lips twitched. "The Banco Toscano has confidence in the Bardi name," he said. "For generations, it has stood strong, and will continue to do so," Lorenzo said lightly. "Of course," Ricci replied, "as long as tradition is accompanied by prudent management." There was a little pause. Not long, but long enough for an attentive girl by the sideboard to feel the room shift. The Baron leaned in. "Speaking of management, Lorenzo, have you considered diversifying? These are uncertain times. One cannot rely only on vines and land." "Depends on the land," someone else added. "Some of us have hills that will never fail us." "Not everyone was so fortunate when estates were being consolidated," Contessa Bianca said. Her voice was smooth, but there was a blade under it. "Some small holders paid dearly for their stubbornness." "Ah, yes," the Baron chuckled. "What was the name of that little vineyard? The one that resisted the longest?" "Which one?" the Marchese asked. "There were several. In the hills south of here," Bianca said. "They had a romantic notion that heart could win against paper. It could not, of course. The Bardi contracts were clear. They always are." Lorenzo's smile tightened, but he said nothing. Lucia's hands stilled on the neck of a bottle. Her heart gave a strange, heavy beat. There were many small vineyards, many names. But the way Bianca spoke made something inside her rise in cold recognition. "Do you speak of the Moretti vineyard, Contessa?" Signor Ricci asked. "I remember that case. It was instructive." Lucia's fingers nearly slipped. The bottle wobbled. She caught it just in time. "Moretti," Bianca said, as if tasting a flavor she did not like. "Yes, that was it. Strange people. They understood vines, perhaps, but not numbers. They should have known better than to stand in the path of a family like the Bardi," the table murmured. Someone laughed. Lucia fixed her eyes on the dark red liquid in the bottle. She felt her cheeks grow warm, but she forced her voice steady. "Wine, Contessa?" she asked, stepping closer. Bianca turned, her sharp gaze flicking to the maid as if she were inspecting a piece of furniture. "Careful, girl," she said. "This is a good dress. Do not shake." Lucia poured without spilling a drop. "Thank you, Signora," she said. Bianca did not answer. She had already turned back to the conversation. Lorenzo watched the exchange with a faint line between his brows. He seemed about to say something when the Marchese spoke again. "Numbers, contracts, banks," he mused. "In the end, we must all bow to them, even those of us with old names, eh, Bardi?" "There is no shame in being modern," someone else added. "Many families have married into money rather than land." The men laughed again. The women glanced at Contessa Bianca. Lorenzo raised his glass. You make it sound as if all I have is an old name and a dusty cellar, he said. I assure you my vines are not ghosts yet. Ricci smiled. We are all subject to the same laws, Count. I simply hope your advisors are as clear-eyed as your ancestors. Lucia moved behind Lorenzo's chair to refill his glass. She saw his hand tighten around the stem. Perhaps I should ask your opinion at the table, Ricci, Lorenzo said. We could entertain our guests with the thrilling tale of interest rates. Soft laughter rose. Oh no, Bianca protested. Spare us the figures. They give me headaches. Parties are for pleasure, not worry. That is precisely why I keep my worries in my study, Lorenzo replied, and my advisors chained to their desks. They cannot be doing such a bad job, the Baron remarked. You still live like a prince. Appearances, dear Baron, Lorenzo said. He tilted his head, as if some sudden thought had come to him. It was the impulsive gesture of a man who used wit to cover discomfort. Or perhaps, he continued, his eyes drifting toward the sideboard, I should seek advice from someone truly unbiased. Several heads turned to follow his gaze. There, standing very straight with a bottle in her hands and an expression carefully blank, was Lucia. Bianca raised an eyebrow. From your servants, Lorenzo. Why not? He said with a careless smile. They see everything and say nothing. That suggests formidable discipline. Some of the men chuckled. Lorenzo's smile widened, but Lucia could see the tension in it now, the way it clung too tightly to his face. Lucia, is it? He asked. She froze, then stepped forward slightly. Yes, signore, she answered, her eyes lowered. He leaned back in his chair. You were listening, I imagine, he said. Servants always are. We were speaking of my finances, my estates, my poor limited mind. Tell me, since you are new to this house and have no interest in flattery, what would you advise a man like me to do with his fortune? The table fell quiet. Marta, across the room, shot Lucia a warning look. Signore? Lucia said. It is a simple question, Lorenzo replied, still sounding amused. If you were in my place, how would you manage the Bardi estates and keep the bank satisfied? Enlighten us. This is cruel, Lorenzo, Bianca murmured. She will faint from fright. She seems sturdy, he said, and if she has nothing to say, she can simply blush and beg forgiveness. I promise I shall not send her to the gallows. A few guests laughed louder than the jest deserved. Lucia felt the heat rise in her cheeks, but not from embarrassment. It was from the memory of a table in a much smaller house, her father's hands stained with earth and worry, men in good coats speaking of contracts he could not read. Lorenzo watched her, expecting a stammer, perhaps a nervous giggle. It would ease the tension in the room. It would show everyone that he, the Count, was still in control, able to make light of anything, even his own finances. Lucia took a breath. Forgive me, signore, she said quietly, but I do not think your question is simple. The silence hardened. Lorenzo's half-smile did not move. No? No, signore, she replied. At least, not if you wish for an honest answer. Bianca laughed softly. How charming. She has opinions. Ricci folded his hands and watched with a new interest. Lorenzo tapped his fingers on the table. Very well, he said. Let us have your honest answer then, Lucia Moretti. What is wrong with my estates? She had not given him her surname. He must have heard it from the servants' lists. The sound of it in his mouth made her stomach twist, but she kept her eyes on the polished wood in front of her. I have not seen your accounts, signore, she began, so I cannot speak of numbers, but I can speak of what I have seen. Do tell, the Marchese said. This is better than the opera. Lucia's hands were steady now. The moment had passed in which she might have retreated. She had stood on the edge and stepped forward. There was no going back. In the kitchen, she said, each day food is thrown away from the table, sometimes more than the servants receive. The portions served to the guests are larger than they eat. If that happens every day and for every dinner, that is money going to the chicken yard instead of the cellar. Marta shifted uncomfortably. Some of the ladies looked offended. How unromantic, one muttered. Lucia continued. The lamps in the east wing burn even when the rooms are empty at night, she said. The coal deliveries are frequent, perhaps too frequent for the number of fires I have seen lit. The stores are never counted twice by the same person. Supplies arrive without anyone comparing what was ordered with what is delivered. Carlo's face turned stiff. He stared at a spot above her head. In the courtyard, Lucia said. Many horses stand idle. The stables are kept as if there were hunts every week, but I have never seen one. The grooms are many. Some of them work from dawn till dusk, others stand with nothing to do. The men who do nothing still receive wages. The Baron frowned. Is she accusing you of laziness, Bardi? He joked weakly. Lorenzo did not laugh. His eyes had sharpened. Go on, he said. Lucia swallowed. You have land, signore, she said. I have seen the hills from the servants' windows. Some fields are well kept. Others have vines that are old and poorly tended. The workers say those parcels are no longer worth the effort, yet they are still counted as if they were gold. If they do not give good harvest, they are not assets. They are memories. Ricci sat a little straighter. And what would you have him do, he asked. Sell half his land to the first merchant who knocks? No, Lucia said. I would have him know exactly what each parcel gives him, not what it gave his grandfather. If a field costs more to maintain than it brings in wine, it is not land. It is a hole in the purse. A hole in the purse, someone repeated under their breath. Lorenzo's throat moved as he swallowed. And the bank? He asked. What wisdom do you offer about that? Lucia hesitated. Speaking of waste in a kitchen was one thing. Speaking of the bank in front of the banker himself was another. Still, the memory of her father's face pushed her forward. I do not know the terms of your loans, signore, she said. But I have heard small things. The maids talk when they scrub the floors of the study. They say you receive letters every week, with new conditions written inside. Bianca's lips parted in amusement. The walls have ears, Ricci, she murmured. Lucia went on. If a man is drowning, signore, it does not help him to take a heavier stone, she said. If the interest is high, and the returns from the land are low, borrowing more, or extending the debt without changing how the land is used, is only postponing the day he cannot breathe. Ricci's eyes narrowed. And what does a maid know of interest? He asked. My father dealt with merchants, she said softly. He taught me that if the coin you must give in a month is more than the coin you can earn from your vines, then the bargain is bad, no matter how pretty the paper. That is peasant talk, the Marchese scoffed. Peasant talk kept families fed before there were banks, Lucia answered almost before she thought. Another silence fell. This one was heavier. Lorenzo's gaze rested on her face, searching for something. Insolence, mockery, fear. He found none. Only a calm that cost her more strength than anyone there could imagine. Are you saying my advisers have done a poor job? He asked. I am saying, signore, she replied carefully, that if what you wish is to keep your fortune, it may be wise to look at where the coin actually goes. Not just at the walls and the name above the gate. Sometimes men who live inside big houses do not see where the money leaks, because they never carry it themselves. You imply that I am blind in my own home, he said quietly. Lucia met his eyes for a brief second, then lowered her gaze again. I imply nothing, signore, she said. You asked me what I would do if I were in your place. I would count. Every crate of wine, every barrel, every sack of flour, every candle. I would make sure the men who work hardest are paid, and those who stand with idle hands are not. I would keep only the land that gives life, and let go of the land that drinks it. And I would not sign any paper that asks more of my vines than they can give. Her voice softened at the end. For her, it was not theory. It was memory. No one spoke. The clatter of knives and forks had stilled. Even the fire seemed to have quieted. At the far end of the table, a lady shifted in her seat, as if the silence itself weighed on her shoulders. Then the Baron laughed loudly. Well, Lorenzo, he said, you have invited a philosopher into your kitchen. Nervous laughter followed. It did not erase the tension, only wrapped it in thinner cloth. Bianca's eyes flashed. Such boldness from a maid, she said. You may wish to teach your staff the value of knowing their place. Ricci's voice was mild, but there was steel under it. Or perhaps the Count should hire her for the bank, he said. If peasant wisdom is all that is needed to manage an estate, we financiers have been wasting our time. Lorenzo's gaze did not leave Lucia. Enough, he said at last. The word was soft, but it carried. The guests quieted. Lucia felt the air pressing against her skin. She stepped back toward the sideboard, heart pounding. I asked for her answer, Lorenzo said, his voice smooth again but lacking the easy warmth from earlier. She gave it, We should not punish honesty when we demand it for our own amusement. Bianca gave a little shrug. As you wish. It is your house. Yes, he said. It is. The rest of the dinner moved like a carriage with a broken wheel. It continued because it had to, but every turn felt slightly off. The guests tried to steer the conversation back to lighter topics. Music, theatre, a rumoured engagement. But attention kept straying to the silent figure by the sideboard. Lucia spoke only when required. More wine, signore? May I clear your plate, signora? Her hands obeyed her. Her thoughts ran elsewhere. She replayed every word she had spoken, every glance, every breath in that sudden, terrifying hush. Had she been insolent? She had not meant to be. She had meant only to answer. Her father would have done the same, she thought, to speak truth when asked, even if the truth was unwelcome, but her father had lost everything. When the final course was served, and the guests began to drift toward the salon for coffee and music, Lucia felt her legs tremble with relief. Marta grabbed her arm in the corridor. "Have you lost your senses?" she hissed, speaking to the Count like that in front of everyone. "He asked," Lucia said weakly. "He asked for a joke, not a sermon," Marta snapped. "If he sends you away, do not say no one warned you." "He defended me," Lucia said. "A little. He defended his pride," Marta retorted. "And you wounded it. Pray he forgets by morning." Lucia tried to smile, but it came out crooked. "I will work twice as hard," she murmured. "He will have other things to think about." She spent the next hour in a haze of clinking cups and whispering servants. From the half-open door of the salon, she heard the piano and the murmur of voices. Twice, laughter rose and broke like weak waves. It did not sound like the laughter of people at ease. When the last guest finally left, the house settled into a different kind of silence. The lamps were dimmed one by one. The great hall emptied. The chandeliers looked tired. Lucia helped stack plates in the pantry, her shoulders aching. All she wanted was her narrow bed in the attic, the rough blanket, the brief comfort of sleep before the next dawn. Carlo entered, his steps firm as ever. "Enough for tonight," he said to the kitchen maids. "Finish in the morning." The women murmured in gratitude and began to put things away. Lucia picked up a stack of folded cloths. "Lucia," Carlo said. She turned, clutching the linen. "Yes, Signor Carlo." He studied her for a moment. His face, usually closed, was unreadable. "The Count has retired to his study," he said. "He wants to see you." Her heartbeat stumbled. "Now?" she asked. "Now," he replied. "It is late," she whispered. "I am aware of the hour," Carlo said. His orders were quite clear. Her mouth went dry. "What did he say?" Carlo's gaze grew a little heavier on her face. "He said," the butler answered slowly, "that I am to bring you to his study at once, Lucia, no matter the hour." Lucia followed Carlo through the dark corridor, the folded cloth still in her hands. The lamps were low now, most of the house slept. Each step echoed more loudly than the last. "Put those down," Carlo said quietly. "You will not need them." She laid the cloths on a side table and wiped her damp palms on her apron. "Is he angry?" she asked. Carlo hesitated, which frightened her more than a simple yes. "He is not pleased," the butler said. "But he is also curious. That is sometimes more dangerous." He stopped outside the study door and knocked. "Enter," came Lorenzo's voice. Carlo opened the door and motioned for Lucia to go in. She stepped across the threshold, her heart pounding in her ears. The study smelled faintly of ink and wine. Lamps burned on the desk and near a low cabinet. The fire in the hearth had died down to embers. Papers lay in ordered piles, though one stack was slightly crooked, as if someone had pushed it aside in impatience. Count Lorenzo stood near the desk, jacket unbuttoned, tie loosened. The polished ease he had worn at dinner was gone. He looked tired and, to Lucia's eyes, more human. He did not speak right away. He watched her as Carlo closed the door behind them. "You wish to see me, signore," Lucia said softly, folding her hands. "I did," Lorenzo replied. "Come closer. I cannot shout across the room. It ruins the woodwork." There was a trace of humor in his tone, but it did not reach his eyes. She obeyed, stopping a respectful distance from the desk. Carlo remained by the door as if planted there. For a moment, no one spoke. The ticking of the clock on the mantel grew loud. "Do you know," Lorenzo began at last, What most servants do when their master makes a joke at their expense in front of a table full of nobles. Lucia gripped her fingers together. They laugh, signore, she said. Yes, he said. They laugh. They look foolish and say too much wine made them clumsy, and everyone is satisfied. The master looks generous. The guests feel superior. The world remains in its place. He walked slowly around the desk, his steps quiet on the carpet. You did not laugh, he continued. You asked me a question, she said. I thought you wanted an answer. The kind of answer I wanted, he replied, was something like, oh, signore, I am too stupid to advise you, followed by a blush, perhaps a giggle, then retreat. Instead, you gave me an inventory of my waist and a lecture on holes in purses. She winced. I spoke out of turn. You spoke out of turn, he repeated. Very clearly. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the faint shadow of stubble on his jaw, the small line between his brows that had deepened tonight. Were you trying to humiliate me, Lucia? He asked. No, signore, she said at once. Then what were you trying to do? He pressed. She lifted her chin a fraction. You used my place to make a jest, she said quietly. I did not think it was fair. Fair, he echoed. Do you imagine that fairness governs dinners like the one you served tonight? No, signore, she answered. But I thought honesty might help you more than flattery. His mouth twitched. Have you thought of helping me? He said slowly. While I was thinking only of amusing myself. She said nothing. Lorenzo exhaled through his nose and turned away, pacing once toward the fireplace and back. Do you know what they will say tomorrow? He asked. Those people you poured wine for? They will say that I did not know my place, she replied. They will say, he said, that I have lost control of my own house, that my servants correct me, that my finances are in such ruin even the maids can see it. They will laugh in their salons. They will tell the story of how Count Bardi's new maid gave him advice on interest and candles. She felt the blood drain from her face. I am sorry, signore, she whispered. I did not mean to bring you ridicule. Oh, but you have, he said wryly. At least for a little while. He leaned back against the edge of the desk, crossing his arms. Yet, he added, between their laughter and your words, there was a moment at that table when everything you said sounded more sensible than anything I have heard in months. Lucia looked up in surprise. Signore? You spoke of food wasted, lamps burning, idle men, dead vines, he said. You spoke of land that costs more than it brings in. You spoke of not signing papers that demand more than the vines can give. That last part was unpleasantly familiar. He glanced at a closed drawer where Lucia guessed the urgent letter now lay. Tell me, he said, turning back to her, how does a maid from the countryside speak as if she has read balance sheets and contracts? Who taught you to think this way? My father, she said. Your father was a bookkeeper, Lorenzo asked. No, signore. He had a vineyard. A small one, I gather. Yes. And he taught you numbers, Lorenzo said incredulously. Most men I know would rather teach their daughters to embroider. My father said vines do not grow on lace, Lucia replied. He needed someone to help count the barrels and the coins. My brothers were younger. I was quickest with sums. He studied her face, as if trying to see the child she had been. So he trusted you, he said. He had no choice, she answered. We could not afford a man from the city to keep our accounts. So I learned. From whom? He asked. From the merchants, she said. From watching their hands when they counted. From listening to what they did not say out loud. From the priest, who had an old arithmetic book. From mistakes we could not afford to make twice. There was no self-pity in her voice, only a plain statement of fact. Lorenzo's gaze flicked to Carlo. Do you hear this? He asked. We should have hired her as steward, not as maid. Carlo gave a small grunt. She is clever with figures, signore. I noticed. You noticed, Lorenzo repeated, yet you did not think to mention it. I did not think you wished to hear advice from the kitchen, Carlo said. Until tonight, that is. Lorenzo rubbed the bridge of his nose, then straightened. Very well, he said. If you have such a talent for seeing what leaks, let us put it to the test. Come. He moved around the desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a stack of bound books and folded papers. Signor Carlo, the ledgers, he said. All of them. Carlo hesitated. Signore, these are not matters for... For whom? Lorenzo cut in. For bankers and lawyers who lie to my face? For cousins who offer to buy my land for half its worth? Bring them. Carlo's jaw worked, but he obeyed. He crossed to the cabinet and unlocked it, drawing out several more ledgers, thick and worn. Lucia watched with growing unease. Signore, I am only a maid, she said. You should not place such trust. I am placing you under suspicion, not trust, Lorenzo interrupted. If you are only repeating some gossip you heard, we shall see it at once. If you truly understand what you spoke of, we shall see that also. He gestured to the chair opposite his own. Sit, he said. She froze. I cannot, signore, she murmured. Servants do not sit in the master's study. Tonight they do, he said. Consider it an experiment in poor management. Sit. Her legs felt strangely weak as she lowered herself onto the edge of the chair. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers intertwined. Lorenzo opened one of the ledgers and turned it so it faced her. These are last year's accounts for the South Fields, he said. Read. She bent over the numbers. Columns of figures marched down the page. Wages, tools, fertilizer, barrels, transport, fees. Her eyes moved quickly. How long would it take for you to know whether this field is profitable? He asked. She did not answer at once. She followed the line of totals, then the notes scribbled in the margin. Does this include the wine that was lost to spoilage? She asked. He blinked. What? There is no line for spoiled barrels, she said. There is always spoiled wine. Bottles broken, barrels tainted. If it is not here, then either there was no waste at all, which is impossible, or the loss was hidden in another line. Hidden, Lorenzo repeated. Shifted, she corrected herself. Perhaps under general expenses. That line is large and vague. He leaned closer. Can you find the leak? He asked. Not with only this page, she said. I would need to see the cellar inventory. The number of barrels harvested, the number sold, the number still in stock. You think like a clerk, he said. I think like someone who has been surprised by empty shelves, she replied. He watched her trace a fingertip down the column. This man, she said, tapping a particular name, is paid more than the others. Why? He is the overseer, Lorenzo said. Does he work more hours? She asked. I do not know, he admitted. Then perhaps he is worth it, she said. Or perhaps he watches others work and tells you fine stories when he delivers these numbers. A muscle jumped in his cheek. Another ledger, he told Carlo. One by one they went through them. Lucia did not move fast, but she did not move slowly either. She did not have the full picture, and she did not pretend to. She asked questions instead. Why are there more workers listed in the North Fields than I see in the courtyard? How often do you pay the man who delivers coal? Who signs for the deliveries? Why does the kitchen order so much flour when the bread is always the same? With each question, the study seemed to shrink. Carlo shifted his weight from foot to foot. Lorenzo's face grew more serious. At last he closed a ledger with a sharp snap. Enough, he said. Lucia flinched. Have I offended you, signore? She asked. He shook his head slowly. You have done something worse, he said. Her heart sank. You have confirmed what I feared, he continued. That I have been living in a house full of holes and calling it sturdy. That everyone around me has been too comfortable, too cowardly, or too dependent to point to the cracks. He looked at her. Everyone, he repeated, except a maid who has been here 3 weeks. I am sorry, she said again. Stop apologizing, he snapped. It is very irritating. She bit her lip. He sighed, pressing his fingers to his temples. You have a talent I cannot afford to ignore, he said at last. And a position I cannot acknowledge. That is inconvenient. She said nothing. She watched him think. Lucia, he said quietly, I am going to ask you for something you may not wish to give. I want your eyes on these accounts, all of them. Her breath caught. Signore, you will not replace my advisors, he said. I cannot very well tell the banker that my finances are now managed by a girl from the kitchen, but you will review, you will count, you will note where the numbers do not fit the truth you see with your own eyes. I am a servant, she protested. I have work, floors to scrub, linens to... Carlo can adjust the duties, Lorenzo said. You will still work, of course. We cannot have the staff whispering that you spend all night in my study with nothing to show for it. The word sent a chill through her. She imagined the looks, the smirks. I do not wish the others to think, she began. They will think what they wish, he said briskly. Servants live on gossip the way we live on wine. But you will not be alone with me. Carlo will be present whenever possible. Doors can remain open. I will not have my name or yours dragged through the mud. I am asking for your mind, Lucia, not your reputation. She flushed. And in return, she asked quietly. He seemed almost amused. You negotiate, he said. I must, she answered. If I am to risk anger from your advisers, and gossip from the servants, and resentment from those who think I rise above my place, there must be something to make it worthwhile. Very well, he said. What do you want? She thought of her narrow bed, her small pay packet, the memory of a house that had once been hers. A fair wage for extra work, she said. Not charity, and protection. From whom? He asked. From being dismissed because someone important does not like that a maid has opinions, she said. He looked at her for a moment, then nodded. You have my word, he said. As long as you are honest with me, I will not allow anyone to send you away in a fit of wounded pride. She swallowed. And if you do not like what I tell you, she asked. He gave a short, humorless laugh. I already do not like what you tell me, he said. That is not the point. The point is whether it is true. He extended his hand across the desk, as if sealing a bargain with an equal. She stared at it, startled. I cannot, signore, she whispered. It is not proper. Nothing about this is proper, he replied. But very well. We shall seal it with words instead. You will work at night after your duties are done. Carlo will arrange it. You will say nothing to anyone about what you see. Do you agree? Yes, signore, she said. And you will not temper your observations to spare my feelings, he added. If there is a hole, you will point at it, even if I have been stepping over it for years. Do you agree? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Good, he said. Then we are conspirators. How charming. Carlo cleared his throat. Signore, he said, this is dangerous. So is drowning, Lorenzo answered. I prefer to swim even if my teacher is a maid. He began to gather the ledgers into a neater pile. That is all for tonight, he said. You look ready to fall over. She realized she was trembling with exhaustion. Thank you, signore, she murmured. As she turned to go, he spoke again. Lucia. She stopped. Earlier at dinner, he said slowly, when the Contessa mentioned that little vineyard, but you almost dropped the wine. Why? Her heart lurched. It was nothing, signore, she said quickly. I was nervous. I do not believe you, he said. She gripped her skirt. It was nothing, she repeated. He studied her for a long moment, then inclined his head. Very well, he said. For tonight, it is nothing. Go and sleep. Tomorrow we begin counting. She fled the room with as much dignity as she could, and Carlo closed the door behind her. In the servants' quarters, the air was thick with the soft snores and sighs of sleeping people. Lucia slipped into her bed without undressing fully, her mind buzzing. She had not asked for this. She had only tried to answer a question honestly. Now she was tangled in the affairs of a man whose name had hovered over her life like a distant cloud for years. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was of her father at the table with his ledger, shaking his head at a number that did not make sense. She could still hear him muttering, "If only they would let me see their books," he had said once. "If only they would show me the truth, not the pretty words." Morning came too soon. The house woke with clattering pots and voices. Lucia moved through her duties as if nothing had changed. Only Marta's narrowed eyes reminded her that something had. "Did he send you away?" Marta demanded in the bedroom. "No," Lucia said. "What did he say?" the older woman pressed. "That I should be more careful," Lucia replied, which was not entirely a lie. Marta sniffed. "If you are clever, you will keep your head down from now on. The great ones do not like to be reminded they put their trousers on one leg at a time." Lucia made non-committal sounds and went back to work. Days passed. Each evening, once the dishes were washed and the floors swept, Carlo would appear in the kitchen doorway and say her name, Lucia. She would wipe her hands, straighten her apron, and follow him to the study. Sometimes Lorenzo was waiting, sleeves rolled, ink on his fingers. Sometimes he arrived later, smelling faintly of the stables or of the cool night air from the vineyards. They would sit, the door half open, Carlo at his post, and Lucia would go through receipts, lists, and ledgers. She did not understand everything. Some terms were new to her, but she understood enough. Enough to see patterns of waste and carelessness, enough to notice where numbers were too round to be honest. "You pay the coal man on the 5th of every month," she pointed out one night. "But the deliveries are irregular. Some months he comes twice, some 5 times. Why is his payment the same no matter what he brings?" "Because that is the agreement," Lorenzo said. "A retainer." "It is not a retainer if he takes more than he gives," she answered. On another evening she asked, "Why do you have 3 men listed as stable hands when only 2 work?" "The third is the brother of the overseer," Carlo explained. "He is delicate." "Delicate?" Lucia asked. "Fond of cards," Lorenzo said dryly. "His hands are only delicate when there is a broom to hold." "Then why do you pay him?" she asked. "Because his brother is useful," Lorenzo answered. "And because my father did." "The vines do not care who your father paid," Lucia said. "They care who prunes them." Little by little her words began to take root. Orders went out to count supplies more carefully. Wages were adjusted. Idle men were given tasks or dismissed with compensation. Unproductive parcels were marked on a map with small crosses. "There," Lucia said, pointing to the cluster of crosses. "Those fields drink your money." "Those fields are my childhood," Lorenzo said quietly. "Then keep one," she suggested, "for your memories. Let the others go." He looked at her with something like sorrow, then nodded. Rumors, meanwhile, grew in the servants' hallways. Lucia heard them all. "The Count meets with her at night. Carlo is always there. That is what they say." "Do you think she—" Lucia pretended not to hear. In the salons of Florence and neighboring estates, another story took shape. "Have you heard?" the Marchese asked one afternoon, dropping into a chair in a private club. "Bardi allows his servants to advise him on money now. Next he will ask the horses." They laughed. "You mock," Contessa Bianca said, lifting her cup of chocolate. "But they say his new maid is unusually bold." "Insolent, you mean?" the Baron replied. "She humiliated him in his own dining room." "I was there," Bianca reminded them. "It was amusing. For us. Less so for him. He should marry her," someone joked. "Then at least her impertinence would be contained under his roof." "Do not give him ideas," Bianca said coolly. "He needs a wife with a dowry, not a girl who counts candles." Lorenzo heard bits of this from acquaintances, delivered with smiles that did not reach their eyes. "You have become a legend, my friend," one said. "The Count who takes advice from the scullery." "At least someone in my house uses their head," Lorenzo replied. The man blinked, then laughed uncertainly. On a clear morning, some weeks later, a small gathering assembled in the entrance hall of the Bardi estate. The Marchese had come to discuss a possible business arrangement. With him was an older nobleman Lucia had not seen before, a man with silver hair and a lined but shrewd face. He leaned on a cane more out of habit than necessity. Lucia was carrying a tray of refreshments when Carlo announced them. "Marchese di Valenti, Signor Alvis Montori." "Montori," Lorenzo said warmly. "You have escaped the city." "The city was boring me," Montori replied. "I thought I would come see if the countryside had improved." They exchanged pleasantries. The Marchese made a joking remark about Lorenzo's new methods of management, which Lorenzo deflected with a lighter one about fresh eyes and old accounts. As Lucia approached with the tray, Montori's gaze brushed over her, the way a man notices a painting on a wall he has not examined yet. "Do you have new stuff?" he remarked. "I do not remember this face." "She is recent," Carlo said. "What is your name, girl?" Montori asked. "Lucia, signore," she replied. "And your family name?" he persisted. She hesitated for half a heartbeat. "Moretti, signore," she said. The air in her lungs felt suddenly thick. Montori's brows rose. "Moretti," he repeated. "Now there is a name I have not heard in some years." The Marchese chuckled. "Oh, you remember them?" "Of course I remember them," Montori said. "I advised your father on that matter, Bardi. A stubborn little vineyard that did not know when to yield. Sentimental fools. They nearly cost us a useful consolidation." Lorenzo's smile faded slightly. "You speak of the South Hills?" he asked. "Yes," Montori replied. "The Moretti vineyard. I remember telling your father it was a blessing when they finally signed. A wise decision in the end. Their land strengthened the Bardi holdings for a time." Lucia's grip on the tray tightened dangerously. The cups rattled. "Careful," Carlo murmured. She steadied them, but she could not steady her pulse. Every word landed like a stone in water, sending ripples through memories she had tried to bury. "A wise decision," Montori repeated, oblivious. They were not made for the modern world, those people. Numbers frightened them. They were lucky the law took pity and allowed them to keep their house a little longer. Lorenzo glanced at Lucia then. He saw her face, paler than usual, her eyes fixed on some point just beyond them. It was the look of someone who had been punched without anyone lifting a hand. "Is something wrong?" he asked softly. She blinked and forced herself to meet his gaze. "No, signore," she said. Montori barely looked at her. "They should be grateful to your family even now," he told Lorenzo. "If your father had been less generous, they would have been on the road sooner." The tray felt heavier in Lucia's hands. Her father's voice echoed in her head. "They called it generous," he had said once, "when they left us with debts instead of vines." Lorenzo dismissed the men politely and led them toward his office, but before he followed, he turned back to Lucia. She stood very straight, the tray still in her hands. Her knuckles were white. "Lucia," he said quietly, "put that down before you drop it." She obeyed, placing the tray on a nearby table. Her movements were precise, almost mechanical. "Are you unwell?" he asked. "I am well, signore," she said, though her voice was thin. He searched her face. "Montori's words disturbed you," he said. "Why?" She swallowed. "Because they are not only stories to me," she answered. His eyes narrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" he asked. She looked at him steadily now, something hard and vulnerable all at once in her gaze. "Do you truly not know what the name Moretti means to your house, signore?" Lorenzo stared at her, as if he had misheard. "What it means," he repeated. "Yes, signore," Lucia said. "To your house, to your name, to your land." He frowned, glancing toward the hallway where Montori's cane had just clicked away. "I know there was a dispute once," he said slowly. "My father mentioned it in passing. A small vineyard that resisted selling. Legal matters, contracts, it was settled years ago." "Settled?" Lucia echoed. "Is that what they call it here? What would you call it?" he asked. Her mouth tightened. "I would call it the day everything I knew disappeared," she said. He went very still. "Come," he said quietly. "Not here." He signaled to Carlo, who had been hovering nearby. "See that we are not disturbed," Lorenzo told him. "Bring the tray back to the kitchen. And then if anyone asks, I am walking the south corridor alone." Carlo's eyes flicked from his master to Lucia. "Yes, signore," he said. Lorenzo turned back to her. "Follow me," he said. He led her down a narrower passage away from the main hall to a small room that looked out over the vineyards. It was a modest office, less formal than the study, with a plain table and a single cabinet. He closed the door halfway, leaving it not quite latched. "Sit," he said. She stayed standing. "I prefer to stand, signore," she replied. "As you wish," he said. He rested his hands on the back of the chair instead. "Explain," he said. "What did Montori's words stir in you?" Lucia stared out the window, where rows of vines stretched into the distance, neat and endless. "When I was a child," she began, "those hills were my world. Not these exactly, but not so far away. We had less land than you see there, but to me it was everything. My father walked between the vines each morning, touching leaves, checking soil. My mother counted jars in the pantry. I counted barrels and coins on the kitchen table." Her voice stayed calm, though a faint tremor edged it. "We were not rich," she went on, "but we were not desperate. We had seasons of plenty and seasons of worry like everyone. Then men started coming more often, men in good coats with boots that did not have dust on them. They spoke to my father about contracts, about consolidation, about how small vineyards would not survive." Lorenzo listened in silence. "They said a family like ours could not stand alone," she said, "that we should join our land with a stronger name. They said Bardi at first, in polite ways. My father resisted. He said the land had been ours for generations, that he would not sign it away lightly." "Stubborn," Lorenzo murmured. "Loyal," Lucia corrected. "To those who had come before him, to what his hands understood." She clasped her fingers tightly. "But the men kept coming," she continued. "They changed their words, but not their purpose. They spoke of debts, of taxes, of how the world was changing. They showed him papers he could not read well. They told him they would help him, that the bank would be kinder if he worked with the Bardi name instead of against it. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. Did he have debts? He asked. Of course, she said. Any man who works the land has debts. Some years the vines are generous, some years they are cruel. But he had never been behind in his payments. Not until the merchants changed their prices and the bank changed its terms. And the Bardis appeared, he said quietly. Yes, she answered. They appeared with solutions. He looked away for a moment, then back at her. Where do you fit in? He asked. You were a girl. You could not sign anything. I fit in at the table, she said, counting, listening. She drew a breath. One day one of those men came without warning, she said. He wore a Bardi ring. I remember it because the sunlight on the gold bothered my eyes. He brought a document he said would protect us. He told my father that if he signed, the bank would be kinder, the debts would be easier, that the Bardi family would become almost partners, that everyone would benefit. And your father believed him, Lorenzo said. My father did not know what else to believe, she replied. He was tired. The year had been bad, there had been hail. One of my brothers was ill. The man put the paper on the table and pointed to the place where he should sign. My father hesitated. He said he wanted more time. He said he could not read the words well, that someone should explain them again. She paused, swallowing. And? Lorenzo asked. And the man smiled, Lucia said softly. He turned to me. He said, You are a clever girl, are you not? You count the barrels. You must understand that this will help your family. Your father is afraid because he is not used to paper. But you understand numbers. Lorenzo watched her face. What did you do? He asked. I believed him, she whispered. He showed me the place where the figures were written. He pointed to a line that said how much coin would come, how much would go. He spoke quickly. I tried to follow. I thought if we refused, the bank would be harsher, that with the Bardi name on our side we would be safe. She looked down at her hands. I told my father to sign, she said. I said, Papa, it is not so bad. Look, they promise time. They promise help. He trusted me. He trusted him. He signed. And the paper? Lorenzo asked, though he already knew. It did not give us time, she said. It gave the Bardi estate the right to take our land if we failed to meet the new terms. Terms we were already too weak to meet. Silence settled between them for a moment. Lorenzo's fingers tightened on the chair. My father, he said slowly, used to say that some sacrifices were necessary to keep the estate strong, that small vineyards would fall so larger ones could survive. Your father did not have to look at my mother's face when she realized the house would not be ours, Lucia said. He winced. I was not there, he said. No, she replied. You were here, I suppose, learning to ride and to speak French. It is not your fault what happened then. But you asked if I knew what the name Moretti means to your house. I do. It is written in your land, like a shadow. He ran a hand through his hair. Why did you not tell me before? He asked. Because I needed this work, she said, and because I wanted to see if you were like them. Them? He echoed. The men who came with papers and smiles, she said. The men who called it generosity when they left us with nothing. His shoulders slumped slightly. I have been many things, he said quietly. Idle, careless, proud. But I did not seek to ruin your family, Lucia. I did not even know your name when you came to work here. I know, she said. If I had thought you had done it with your own hands, I would never have stepped through your gate. He took that in, then nodded. Very well, he said. Now I know. Moretti is not just a name from a file. It is this. He gestured helplessly toward her, toward the window, toward something he could not quite define. Lucia straightened. Does this change the agreement we made? She asked. He looked at her sharply. Do you wish it to change? He asked. I do not know, she admitted. If you felt guilty, you could dismiss me, or you could pay me extra coins to soothe your conscience. I want neither. What do you want then? He asked. The same as before, she said. To work, to be paid fairly, to be treated with respect, to be allowed to tell you the truth even when it hurts. He studied her for a long moment. You are an unusual woman, Lucia Moretti, he said. In the country, I am only a girl who lost her home, she replied. In this house, he said. You may be the only person keeping it from collapsing. She shook her head. You give me too much importance, she said. I am only pointing at leaks. He did not argue. Go back to your tasks, he said quietly. We will talk more tonight. About land, about debts, about what can be done. She hesitated. And about the past, she asked. About the past, he agreed. I will look in the archives this afternoon. I want to see the paper you mentioned. I want to know what my father signed his name to. She gave a small nod. Be careful, she murmured. Of what? He asked. Of what you may find, she said. He watched her leave the room, her back straight, her movements controlled. That afternoon, Lorenzo descended to the archive room, a cool, dim space that smelled of paper and dust. Carlo followed, carrying a lantern. Your father kept everything, Carlo said. Receipts from 30 years ago, letters from men long dead. You will not find peace here, signore. I am not looking for peace, Lorenzo replied. I am looking for the truth. They opened drawers and boxes. They sorted bundles tied with fraying strings. Here, Carlo said at last, pulling out a folder with a neat label in Vittorio Bardi's hand. South Consolidation. Lorenzo took it. His father's handwriting was firm and elegant on the first page. He read quickly at first, then slower. Letters from Montori, notes from the bank, reports from an agent who had visited the Moretti vineyard. The words were polite. The meaning was cold. Owner hesitant, Lorenzo read aloud. Family attached to land beyond reason. Recommends tightening of credit to encourage cooperation. Carlo shifted uncomfortably. Yes, Lorenzo said. Encourage cooperation. How generous. He turned another page. Here, he murmured. The contract. The paper was thick, the ink still dark. There was his father's name at the bottom, bold and clear. Beside it, in a smaller, more careful hand, was another. Giovanni Moretti, Lorenzo read. And here, witness, Alvise Montori. He looked at the clauses. He saw the increased interest, the shortened terms, the clause that allowed the estate to absorb the land if payments were late. This is not partnership, he said. This is a noose. It was legal, Carlo said quietly. Legal and just are different things, Lorenzo snapped. My father knew that. He believed he was protecting the estate, Carlo replied. The times were uncertain. There were other families waiting to take your place if he did not fight. By strangling men like Moretti, Lorenzo said bitterly. He closed the folder with a sharp movement. Signore, Carlo ventured, you cannot change what is done. I can refuse to pretend it was something noble, Lorenzo said, and I can decide what I will do now that I know. That is something. He replaced the folder in the box. That will be all for today, he said. Leave me. Carlo hesitated, then bowed and left the room. Alone, Lorenzo sat on a low stool, elbows on his knees. He thought of Lucia as a girl, listening at the door, trusting a man with a Bardi ring. He thought of his own younger self, riding across land that had come to him without effort, never asking from whose hands it had been taken. When he finally emerged from the archive, the light had changed. Evening approached. He found Lucia already in the study, standing near the window with a notebook in her hand. She turned when he entered, searching his face. Well? She asked. He closed the door halfway and leaned back against it. You were right, he said. About the paper, about the promises, about who benefited. She nodded once, as if she had expected nothing else. I am sorry, he added. For what? She asked. For what my name did to yours, he said. You did not hold the pen, she replied. It was still my house that grew fat on the land that starved you, he said. She said nothing. He moved to the desk. We have work to do, he said. If I cannot change the past, I can at least decide how I live with it. Sit. They bent over maps and numbers. He showed her the fields marked with crosses. These are the ones I'm considering selling, he said, to cover the bank's demands without losing everything. Who will buy them, she asked. Merchants, other landowners, perhaps Ricci himself, he answered. Then you will only change who holds the rope, she said. I must pay the debts, he said, unless you have a way to make gold appear from the air. She frowned at the map. Some of these fields are poor, she said. You know it, I know it, anyone who has walked them knows it. But these, she pointed at a cluster near the bottom, These could still be made to yield more. The soil is tired, not dead. They need better care, not a different owner. Care costs money, he reminded her. So does selling in desperation, she said. They will smell your need and lower their offers. What if you sold only those parcels that truly drain you at a fair price, not a rushed one, and use the money to improve what remains? Fewer fields, better tended. He rubbed his chin. And the bank? He asked. You showed me the last letter, she said. They want payment, yes, but they also want you to remain respectable. A count with no land is of little use to them. Ricci will not push you over a cliff if he knows he will fall with you. You are suggesting I call his bluff, Lorenzo said. I am suggesting you remind him that you are not the only one who can lose, she replied. If you show him you have a plan to return his money, even if it takes longer, he may accept it rather than risk a scandal. He considered this, then nodded slowly. I will speak to him, he said. Over the following weeks, that plan took shape. Letters went back and forth. Meetings were held in town and at the estate. Ricci arrived one day with a face like a closed door and left with a furrowed brow, muttering about unusual arrangements and unconventional advisers. You have unsettled him, Lorenzo told Lucia afterward. Good, she said. Banks should not sleep too well. At the same time, he began to cut expenses more visibly. A smaller staff in the stables, fewer imported luxuries, no more boxes of Paris fabrics for dresses he did not need. Some nobles took this as another sign of his decline. He is tightening his belt, the Marchese said. Soon he will have nothing left to tighten. Bianca watched with sharper eyes. Or perhaps, she said, he is learning restraint. It would be a novelty. She arrived at the estate more often, always with some pretext. A question about a boundary. A suggestion about a possible marriage alliance with a cousin. A casual remark about rumors of his new habits. You seem much occupied these days, Lorenzo, she said one afternoon in the drawing room. I rarely hear of your hunts or your trips to Florence. Have you turned farmer at last? I have turned attentive, he said. There is a difference. To what do you owe this sudden attention? She asked. A man does not change his nature overnight. Perhaps he does when he discovers he has been asleep for years, he replied. Her gaze flicked toward the study door, half closed. They say you spend many evenings in that room, she remarked, with ledgers and company. Oh, Carlo sits with me, he said mildly. He snores when the figures grow dull. I was not speaking of Carlo, she said. I was speaking of that little maid. Lucia. He kept his expression neutral. What of her? He asked. She walks these halls with her head too high for my taste, Bianca said. The others whisper. They think you favor her. I favor competence, he said. It is rare enough. In a maid? She asked. In anyone, he answered. Her smile thinned. Be careful, Lorenzo, she said. People are watching. They will tolerate your experiments with money. They will not be so forgiving if they think you are entangled with a servant. There is nothing improper between us, he said stiffly. That will not stop them from talking, she replied, and talk can be as dangerous as debt. She left soon after, but her words lingered. That night in the study, the atmosphere felt heavier. Lucia sensed it as soon as she entered. Is something wrong, signore? She asked. Only the usual, he said. Money, pride, people who think they know what is best for me. Then nothing is new, she said softly. He almost smiled, then did not. Contessa Bianca thinks you walk with your head too high, he said. Lucia's cheeks colored. I walk as I always have, she said. She believes I favor you, he went on. That there is something between us beyond ledgers and land. Lucia's hands tightened on the back of the chair. There is nothing beyond ledgers and land, she said quickly. He looked at her, and for a heartbeat, something unspoken hung in the air. No, he said quietly. There is nothing. But people like Bianca do not see what is. They see what suits them. She could make trouble, Lucia said. She will if it serves her, he answered. She warned me that my reputation could suffer, that yours could be ruined. Lucia exhaled slowly. I did not expect peace when I came here, she said. Only work. You deserve more than whispers, he said. So does any maid who does her duty, she replied. Yet we rarely receive it. He watched her for a moment. Does it trouble you, he asked, that they speak of you this way? That they attach my name to yours in their gossip? It troubles me that they might harm you with it, she said. Me? He asked, surprised. You are the one with something to lose, she replied. I already lost my name once. It does not frighten me so much to lose it again. But you have land, title, position. If they turn against you because of a maid, it will not be worth the numbers I fix in your books. He took a step closer to her. What if I said you are worth far more to me than their good opinion? He asked. She looked up at him, eyes wide. I would say you are letting sentiment blind you, she answered softly, and that is dangerous for a man in your place. Perhaps I am tired of seeing only with my pride, he said. She shook her head. Do not say things you cannot afford to mean, she whispered. He was about to speak again when a knock sounded at the door. Enter, he called. Carlo slipped inside, closing the door most of the way behind him. A letter from Signor Ricci, signore, he said. He requests another meeting. He is pressing for a decision. Lorenzo took the letter, scanned it, and cursed under his breath. He grows impatient, he said. Banks do, Lucia murmured. They like time when it belongs to them, not when it belongs to others. He folded the letter. I will meet him, he said. I will offer what we planned. If he refuses, she said, we will find another way. He smiled faintly. You say it as if there is always another way, he said. There usually is, she replied. It is just often the way people do not wish to take. The next day he went to town. When he returned late in the afternoon, his face was drawn, but his eyes held a certain light. Well, Lucia asked that evening before she could stop herself. He did not like my terms, Lorenzo said, but he accepted most of them. He will extend the deadline, at a price, of course, but one we can pay if the next harvest is as we plan. Relief washed over her, surprising in its strength. Then we are not drowning yet, she said. Not yet, he agreed. Thanks in large part to you. She shook her head. You would have found another way, she said. I might have, he replied, but it would have cost more than I could bear. Their eyes met. Something deep and quiet passed between them. Days turned into weeks. The work continued. Land was sold carefully, not in panic. Workers were reassigned, not discarded carelessly. Lucia spent more hours than she ever had surrounded by figures, and more moments than she cared to admit, aware of the man who sat across from her. She found herself noticing details she had not before. The way he rubbed his thumb against his forefinger when he thought, the way he swallowed hard when forced to admit a mistake, the way his voice softened when he spoke of the vines not as assets, but as living things. One evening, he caught her watching him. What is it? He asked. Nothing, she said quickly. Do not lie, he said. You are poor at it. She hesitated. I was only thinking, she said. How strange it is that I know the numbers of your house better than I know my own age some days. He laughed quietly. How old are you? He asked. 21, she answered. I think. You think? He repeated. We did not celebrate it much, she said. There was work. He nodded. Then let this year be the first we count properly, he said. For you, for the estate, for both. Her heart gave a small, treacherous leap. Signore, she began, meaning to steer the talk back to safer topics. He interrupted. Lorenzo, he said. She froze. What? She whispered. My name, he said. When we are alone, and only then, it is Lorenzo. I cannot, she said at once. It would not be respectful. It would be honest, he replied. You tell me truths no one else dares. You may at least do it with my name. She struggled. Lorenzo, she said at last, the word unfamiliar on her tongue. He closed his eyes briefly as if savoring it. Again, he said. Lorenzo, she repeated, almost a breath. He smiled, and in that smile was something dangerously close to joy. The door creaked. Carlo cleared his throat loudly. The Contessa is here, signore, he announced. She insists on speaking with you. Lorenzo's smile vanished. Of course she does, he muttered. Very well. Show her to the drawing room. I will come at once. When he was gone, Carlo turned to Lucia. This is becoming delicate, he said. I know, she replied. Be cautious, he said. The Contessa is not blind, and she is not kind. Lucia nodded. The conversation with Bianca lasted longer than usual. When Lorenzo returned, his expression was dark. What did she want? Lucia asked before she could remind herself it was none of her business. She wanted to remind me, he said, that my duty is to my name, not to my conscience. She thinks I should marry money and forget about everything else. And will you? She asked quietly. He looked at her, really looked, as if the answer mattered more than he wished to admit. No, he said simply. She will not like that, Lucia said. She already does not like many things about me, he replied. It is mutual. He sat down heavily. She knows about our work, he said. Not the details, but enough. She threatened to misinterpret it, if I do not fall in line. Lucia felt the room tilt slightly. She could ruin you, she said. She could try, he replied, but I am more concerned that she could hurt you. She hinted as much. She said a word from her and you would find no position in any decent house. Lucia's stomach knotted. I will leave, she said at once. I will go before she can do that. He stared at her. Leave, he repeated. Now, when we are halfway through saving this place? I will not be the stone that drags you under, she said. You have been more than fair to me. I will not stay if my presence harms you. Do you think I am so weak that a contessa's whispers will unmake me? He asked. I think you live in a world where her whispers matter more than my truth, she replied. He stood, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. Lucia, he said, his voice low, listen to me. I do not want you to leave. Not for her. Not for anyone. You may not want it, she said, but it may be necessary. It is not, he insisted. She threatened you, Lucia said. She will go through with it. People like her do not let go once they have decided someone is in their way. His hands curled at his sides. If she harms you, he began, then cut himself off. She shook her head. It is better if I go of my own will, she said. Then you can say you dismissed me for any reason you like. That it was nothing. That there was nothing. There is something, he said fiercely. Her breath caught. What? She whispered. He hesitated, then spoke with sudden clarity. I care for you, he said. More than I should. More than is wise. I cannot pretend otherwise. I will not let her drive you away because of my feelings. Tears stung her eyes. That is exactly why I must go, she said, because if I stay, those feelings will ruin you and me. Let them try, he said. No, she whispered. You do not understand. There is something else, something you do not know, something worse than what your father did to mine. He stared at her, stunned. Worse, he asked. What could be worse than that contract? She looked at him with a mixture of fear and resolve. If you knew, she said softly, you might never want to see me again. Lorenzo's face had gone very still. Then tell me, he said. Tell me what could make me never want to see you again. Lucia wrapped her arms around herself, as if she were cold. You think you know what happened between our families, she said quietly. You think it is only that your father signed a paper and mine paid the price. But there is another hand in that story. Mine. I know you urged him to sign, Lorenzo said. You told me that. That is not all, she replied. You do not know how far I went. He waited. She drew a long breath. When the man with the Bardi ring came with the contract, she said. My father hesitated. He said he wanted time, another opinion. The man smiled and said time was the one thing we did not have. He said the bank was already impatient, that this was our chance to save the vineyard. You believed him, Lorenzo said. I wanted to, she answered, because I wanted to save my father. I was young. I trusted anyone who spoke confidently. He said the notary needed to register the document that same day, that if we delayed, the offer would change. My father still would not sign. Her eyes grew distant. I remember his hands shaking on the pen, she said. I remember my mother watching from the doorway, twisting her apron. I remember my younger brothers peeking from behind her skirts. The man turned to me and said, Help your father. You are clever. You know numbers. Do you want this house to be taken by strangers? Lorenzo's hands tightened. Go on, he said softly. I wanted to help, she repeated. So I did more than speak. I took the pen. I said, Papa, if we do not sign, they will be harsher. If we sign, they may be kinder. The Bardi name is strong. They can protect us. He looked at me as if I had become the adult in the room. That frightened me. But I did not step back. I put the pen in his hand. I told him where to write. When he finished, the man asked for a witness. Her voice dropped. "I signed as witness," she whispered. "The notary said it did not matter that I was a girl as long as I could write my name and knew what I was signing." "She knows," the man said. "She is clever." Lorenzo's eyes burned into her. "You signed," he repeated. "Yes," she said. "I carried the paper to the notary with him. I watched the seal pressed into the wax. I walked home thinking I had helped save us." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "A month later," she went on, "the bank's terms changed again. Interest higher, deadlines shorter. We could not pay." The same man came back, this time with another face, no smile. He pointed to the clause that said what would happen if we failed. He said, "You signed. Your daughter witnessed. It is all in order." She looked at Lorenzo with raw honesty. "I did not just stand by while my father was ruined," she said. "I put my name on the paper that tightened the rope. That is why I thought, if you knew, you might see me as part of what your family did. Not only a victim, also a tool." He studied her, his expression unreadable. "How old were you?" he asked. 14, she said. 14, he repeated. "Old enough to know how to add and subtract," she said. "Old enough to understand that numbers have teeth. Old enough, I thought, to help, but not old enough to see beneath a smooth voice and a gold ring." She drew in a shaky breath. "So now you know," she said. "If you wish me gone, I will go. You need not find an excuse. You can say you dismissed the girl who helped take your land. It would be true." He took a step toward her. "Look at me," he said. She tried to lower her gaze, but he waited. At last, she met his eyes. "Do you truly think," he asked slowly, "that I could blame a 14-year-old girl more than the men who shaped that contract?" "I gave it power in my house," she replied. "If I had told my father to throw it in the fire, perhaps—" "Perhaps," he cut in, "those men would have come back with another paper. Perhaps they would have gone straight to the bank. Perhaps your father would have been crushed anyway. Do you believe they would have said, 'Ah, well, the girl refused, we must be merciful'?" She pressed her lips together. "You were not the one with power," he said. "You were the one with too much trust and too little choice. They used you. That is their shame, not yours." "I pushed his hand," she insisted. "You also counted his barrels," he replied. "You also kept your brothers fed as long as you could. Must you take every burden in that house and put it on your shoulders alone?" "It feels that way," she said. "I know," he answered. "But feeling is not always truth. The truth is, the guilt belongs to the men who saw a tired father and a clever girl and thought, 'We can turn this to our advantage.' One of those men wore my name. I carry that guilt. You do not." Tears filled her eyes. "You speak as if you can simply divide blame like coin," she whispered. "I cannot," he said, "but I can refuse to throw any more of it on you. The stack is high enough." There was a knock on the half-open door. Carlo appeared, hesitant. "Forgive me, signore," he said. "There is a messenger from Signor Ricci. He insists it is urgent." Lorenzo exhaled. "Of course it is," he muttered. "Show him to the small parlor. I will come." Carlo nodded and withdrew. Lorenzo turned back to Lucia. "This is not over," he said. "Not between us. Not this conversation. But I must see what the banker wants to press on my neck today." She wiped her eyes quickly. "I should return to the kitchen," she said. "No," he replied. "Come to the study after the meeting. We will talk then. And you will not leave this house in secret like a thief. I forbid it." "You cannot forbid my going," she said. "Watch me try," he answered. A shadow of a smile flickered at the corner of her mouth despite everything. He left. The meeting with Ricci stretched on. Lucia could not hear the words, but she heard the tones. Sharp, low, rising, falling. Once she heard a chair scrape violently. She scrubbed the same spotless corner of the kitchen twice before Marta smacked her shoulder lightly with a towel. "You are wearing a hole in the floor," Marta said. "What is wrong with you?" "Nothing," Lucia lied. "Then stop cleaning the same stone," Marta snapped. "If the Count dismissed you, you would not be scrubbing at all." Lucia flinched. "He has not," she said. "Yet." Marta's eyes softened a fraction. "If he does, you come to me," she said. "My cousin's mistress always needs good hands." Lucia nodded gratefully. When the clock in the hall struck the hour, Carlo appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Lucia," he said. She straightened. "Yes." "Study," he said. "Now." Her legs felt unsteady as she walked the familiar path. The study door was ajar. She knocked softly. "Come," Lorenzo called. She entered. He stood by the window, his hands in his hair, his tie loosened again. On the desk lay a single folded letter. The seal was broken. "How bad is it?" she asked. He turned and she saw exhaustion on his face, but not defeat. "He has given me a choice," Lorenzo said. "Two, in fact. Both unpleasant." "Tell me," she said. "First," he said, "I can sell to him at his price enough land to cover everything. He will be merciful, he says. The estate will shrink. My debt will be gone. I will become, as he charmingly put it, a simpler man." "And the second?" she asked. "The second is that he will extend my terms a little farther," Lorenzo said. "At higher cost, of course. He says I am already too indebted. He warned that the bank's patience is not infinite. There was a great deal of talk about responsibility." "And your answer?" she asked. He studied her. "I wanted to say yes to the easy thing," he admitted. "To sell, to cut away half my life and sleep at night without thinking of ledgers. But then I saw his face when he spoke of buying the South Fields. He licked his lips like a man at a feast, and I thought of my father, of the Moretti land, of all the corners we cut to stay large. I realized I could be him, now, to someone else." He moved closer to the desk. "So I chose the path with more stones," he said. "I refused to sell to him. I accepted the extension on my terms as much as his. I promised him payment from improved returns. I showed him the numbers, the ones you helped me put together. He called it risky. I called it honest." "And he agreed?" she asked. "Reluctantly," Lorenzo said. "He does not love me. But he loves my name and the hope that it will still be on these gates when he is old. He has given me 1 year, 1 harvest. If I fail, he will not be so flexible next time." "1 year," she repeated. "Yes," he said. 1 year to remake this place before he presses harder. No more mistakes. No more blind generosity to men who do not work. No more sleeping with my accounts under the bed and hoping they fix themselves." He looked at her. "I do not intend to fail," he said. Neither did she. "Then we will not," she replied simply. "What about you?" he asked. "Do you still intend to run?" Her throat tightened. "I thought I should," she said, "to protect you, to protect what you are trying to save." "You are part of what I am trying to save," he said. She shook her head. "You don't mean that," she murmured. "I do," he insisted. "I did not realize how much until Bianca threatened you." "Threatened?" Lucia repeated. He told her then, about Bianca's visit, her warnings, her hints about scandal. "She made it clear," he said, "that if I do not fall back into the path she approves, she will not only withdraw any support, she will also make sure every household hears a story about you. Not the truth, her version. She will make you sound like an ambitious girl who used my trouble to climb above her station." Lucia's hands clenched. "She can do that even if I leave," she said. "Yes," he admitted. "But it will be easier for them to believe her if you stay. That is her hope. She wants me afraid enough to cut you loose myself." "And are you?" Lucia asked. "Afraid." He smiled without humor. "I am not as fearless as I pretend, but the thing I fear most now is becoming the kind of man who obeys his fear instead of his conscience." He took a slow breath. "I have to choose," he said, "between the approval of people like Bianca and the respect of the woman who has shown me the truth about myself. Do you know which one I cannot bear to lose?" She stared at him, hardly breathing. "Do not say it," she whispered. "I must," he said, "because you deserve to hear it clearly, not in half words and glances." He stepped closer. "Lucia," he said, her name gentle and steady. "I love you." She closed her eyes as if the words hurt. "Do not," she said. "Please." "I love you," he repeated. "Not because you helped my accounts, not because you stood up to my pride at that dinner, because you are the only person in my world who has refused to treat me as something more or less than a man, because you carry your wounds with dignity, because you are unafraid to tell me when I am foolish and unafraid to stand with me when I am not." "You are the Count," she said, "and I am your maid. You are Lucia," he said simply, "and I am Lorenzo. Titles sit on top of that, but they are not the whole of us." She shook her head, tears spilling over. "The world will not see it that way," she said. "The world already thinks many wrong things about me," he replied. "One more will not break it." "It may break you," she whispered. "Do you think I have never been broken?" he asked. "I have been hollow without knowing it. Money hid it. Ease hid it. You have been filling that hollow every time you sit across from me and make me look at what I would rather not." She gave a shaky laugh. "Such romantic words," she said, "about ledgers and floors." "Truth is the most romantic thing I know now," he answered. She wiped her cheeks with an impatient hand. "I do not know what to do with what you say," she admitted. "My heart, it is not untouched." "How could it be? You have shown me a kind of kindness I did not expect from your house. But I cannot forget what stands between us. Not only class, history, my father's land under your feet." "I do not ask you to forget," he said. "I ask you to look at what we can build on top of that truth, not pretending the ground is clean, but choosing to plant differently." She looked at him, searching for doubt. She found none. "You would risk your name for me?" she asked. "For you and for the man I wish to be," he said. "They are not separate." Her voice softened. "I am afraid," she confessed. "Afraid that if I say yes to anything in your heart, I will wake one morning to find you have changed your mind, or that you have been forced to change it. Afraid that I will stand in a room full of people like Montori and Bianca and feel their eyes cutting me like knives. Then I must make sure that if you stand in such a room beside me," he said, "you stand there knowing I chose you with my eyes open, not as a folly, as a decision." He took another small step forward. There was still space between them, but less now. "I will not ask you for promises tonight," he said. "No oaths, no declarations. I know I have little right to them yet. But I will ask one thing: do not leave, stay, help me finish what we began. Help me prove, at least, that this house can be something other than a monument to past injustice." "And after?" she asked. "After," he said, "when the harvest is in and the bank is paid enough to stop breathing down my neck, when I have done what I can to set right some part of what my family did, then I will ask you something else, something greater. And you will answer as your heart and conscience guide you, not from fear of gossip, not from gratitude, from yourself." Her heart pounded so loudly she thought he must hear it. "You speak of a later day, as if it were assured," she said. "It is not," he replied. "We could fail. The vines could betray us. The bank could decide I am more burden than asset. But if that day does not come, at least I will know I did not flee from the right path because it frightened me." She hesitated, then whispered, "What if I already know my answer?" "Then keep it safe," he said, "until it can be given without doubt." Silence stretched, but it was softer now, less like a blade, more like cloth. "Very well," she said at last. "I will stay, for 1 year, for one harvest, for the work we began, and," her voice dropped, "because I cannot bear to walk away from you either. Not yet." He let out a breath he had not known he was holding. "Thank you," he said simply. "No," she replied, "do not thank me yet. You may regret it." "I do not regret you," he said. "I regret only the years before I knew you." A faint smile touched her lips. "For a man trying to be serious, you speak like someone from a cheap novel," she said. "Blame desperation," he answered. He moved to the desk and picked up a folded sheet of paper. "There is one more thing," he said. "Something I decided after the archive. I was not sure whether to tell you. But if we are to walk together into this year, you must know." "What is it?" she asked. He handed her the paper. She unfolded it. It was a draft, written in his hand. The title at the top made her heart stumble. "Proposal for partial restitution of South Hill lands," she read aloud, barely. "I cannot restore everything," he said. "Much of your vineyard has been changed beyond recognition. Houses built, fields altered, but there is a strip of land still in my control, not yet sold, not yet transformed. It touches where your father's vines once stood. When I am able, when the bank is satisfied enough that I may breathe without its hand on my throat, I mean to transfer that strip back, to you or to your family if they will accept it. Not as charity, as a correction." Her fingers trembled on the paper. "You would give away land?" she asked, astonished. "I would give away ill-gotten gain," he corrected. "There is a difference, and I suspect the vines will forgive me." She blinked rapidly. "My father is gone," she said. "He died 2 years after the contract. His heart was not made for losing roots. My mother lives with my aunt near Siena. My brothers have scattered. I do not know if they would want to return. Then they may sell it if they wish, he said, or plant olives, or let it lie wild. The important thing is that it does not remain under my name as a quiet triumph. Tears slipped down her cheeks again, silently this time. You do not know what this means, she whispered. I know what it means to me, he replied, and I can imagine a little what it may mean to you. That is enough for now. She folded the paper carefully, as if it were fragile. I will keep this, she said, not as a promise carved in stone, but as a sign of what you wish to become. That is all it is for now, he agreed. The weeks that followed were hard, but different. Work filled every hour. Plans turned into orders, orders into sweat, sweat into fields that began slowly to look less tired. Lorenzo spent more time among the vines, speaking with workers instead of only overseers. Lucia divided her days between the kitchen, the study, and occasional walks to the hills where she could see in the distance the land that had once been hers. One evening, they stood together at the edge of the estate, watching the sky darken over the rows. Do you regret staying? He asked. Ask me when the harvest is in, she said. And your secret, he asked softly, the one you thought would drive me away. Does it still weigh the same? It weighs less when you carry part of it, she admitted. Though I am still learning how to let go. We will both be learning things this year, he said. She glanced at him. What will you be learning? She asked. How to be a man my father might not recognize, he answered. And how to love you without letting that love become a chain around your neck. Her breath caught. You already gave me one chain, she said, half teasing, half serious. One made of numbers and late nights. I intend to replace it with something lighter, he replied. Someday. Her gaze dropped to his hand resting on the low stone wall. Slowly, as if drawn by a thread, her fingers moved closer until they brushed his. He did not grab, he did not press. He simply turned his hand, letting their fingers rest side by side. For a moment the weight of gossip, of banks, of old contracts, of future uncertainty faded. There was only the warm, steady presence between them. 1 year, she murmured. 1 year, he echoed. To prove that we can be more than the people we were made by others. And after, she asked again, though she already knew he would give the same answer. After, he said, I will ask you to walk beside me not as my maid or my hidden advisor, but as my equal. Whatever word the world uses for that. We will see. She let her fingers curl around his, just for a heartbeat longer. Then let us work, she said, so that when that day comes, if it comes, we are not ashamed of where we stand. He turned his head, studying her profile, the quiet strength there. I already am not, he said softly. The summer that followed was not gentle. The sun burned hard on the hills. Rain came late, then all at once. The workers cursed and laughed and kept going. Lucia counted everything. Hours, barrels, crates, days until the bank's deadline. Lorenzo did the same in his head, though he pretended otherwise. One morning, as they stood at the edge of a south field, she plucked a grape and pressed it lightly between her fingers. Sweet, she said. Not too much. The skins are strong. They will hold. Like someone else I know, Lorenzo replied. She rolled her eyes, but there was a smile behind it. We must not celebrate yet, she said. The harvest is only half in. Half is more than I dared hope last year, he answered. You have turned me into a cautious optimist. She walked between the rows, touching leaves, checking bunches. He followed, listening to her short, clear comments. These vines were nearly dead, he said. I had stopped seeing them. They were not dead, she corrected. Only ignored. He watched her move with sure steps and thought, not for the first time, that the land itself seemed to recognize her. By the time the last crate reached the cellar, even Carlo allowed himself a rare grin. We have never filled so many barrels from so few fields, he said. It is like a miracle. It is not a miracle, Lucia said. It is less waste, better care. And workers who can now afford to eat properly. Do not ruin my sense of wonder with your practical truths, Carlo grumbled, but his eyes were warm. They spent nights in the study again, not full of dread this time, but of urgent hope. Lucia ran her finger down columns of figures, lips moving silently. If the merchants accept the price you asked, she said, this will do it. You can pay the bank, keep the remaining fields, and still set aside enough to improve the presses next year. And if they do not accept? He asked. Then we lower the price a little, she said, but not enough to make us crawl. Do not forget they need good wine as much as you need their coin. He laughed under his breath. You talk as if the world does not revolve around my debts, he said. It does not, she replied. It revolves around people wanting to drink after a long day. The merchants came. They tasted, they haggled, they pretended to be unimpressed. In the end, one after another, they agreed to terms that Lorenzo a year earlier would never have managed. Lucia watched from the background, as always, but she saw the way they glanced at her now, with a hint of calculation. Someone had told them something. Stories traveled. One afternoon, after the last merchant left, Lorenzo closed the door and leaned against it. If one more man tells me he is doing me a favor by taking my wine, he said, I will pour a barrel over his head. You will do no such thing, Lucia replied. You will smile and send him to the gate, then laugh about him here with me. You are right, he admitted. It would be a waste of good wine. She spread the latest receipts on the desk. We must send Ricci his payment soon, she said, before he decides you have forgotten. Impossible, Lorenzo muttered. My entire spine has been shaped around that man's expectations. 2 weeks later, Ricci's carriage rolled into the courtyard. The banker stepped down with his usual air of careful importance, but there was something different in his walk. Less assured, more cautious. Lorenzo met him in the drawing room. Lucia stayed in the study, account books open, heart hammering. She told herself it was only another meeting, another negotiation. Yet this time everything they had worked for lay in it. Carlo passed through the corridor an hour later, his expression unreadable. Well, Lucia demanded. Patience, he said. He is writing. Writing what? She asked. Either your doom or your relief, he answered dryly. I cannot tell by the movement of his pen. She wanted to throw something at him and hug him at the same time. At last, Lorenzo entered the study, a folded paper in his hand. He looked at her for a long moment without speaking. Lorenzo, she said, her voice barely steady, if you do not speak this instant, I will— He broke into a smile that transformed his tired face. You will what? He asked. Strike your employer? Former employer, if this has gone badly, she retorted. It has not, he said. Her knees nearly gave way. Say it, she insisted. He opened the paper. The bank, he said, acknowledges receipt of the agreed sum. They accept the revised terms. The remaining debt is now manageable, payable if we do not grow foolish again. Her eyes flew over the lines, seeing numbers, dates, Ricci's signature. It was real. You did it, she whispered. We did it, he corrected. Ricci even wrote with great reluctance that my new methods appear to be yielding results. He means my methods, she murmured. I know, he replied. He will never write that. She sank into the nearest chair, laughter and tears mixing. Look at you, he said gently. The woman who saved my estate struck speechless. I am not speechless, she protested. I am sorting my joy from my relief. There is a lot of both. He came to stand beside her. I will give them time to settle, he said. And then I will trouble them with something more. She sensed a tone in his voice that made her chest tighten. What now? She asked. You have tamed the bank. You cannot be planning to provoke the Pope next. Something far more dangerous, he said. I plan to provoke society. She stared at him. With what? She asked. With the truth, he answered. In front of them all. About this estate. About you. About what I intend to do. Her heart gave a strange, uneven beat. You mean to tell them, she began. Everything that matters, he said. Not every number, only the ones that count in lives. Lorenzo, she said carefully, you must think of this. They may not applaud. I do not want their applause, he replied. I want their silence. I want their shocked faces. I want them to see that the world they think is fixed can shift. He walked to the window, looking out over the courtyard. I will invite them, he said. Montori, the Marchesi, the Baron, Bianca, of course, Ricci. Those who watched for my fall, those who whispered. For a dinner, she asked. For a harvest celebration, he said. Modest, honest, no false glitter. Then when they are gathered, I will speak. I will tell them what nearly happened, what did happen to others and what will happen now. She rose slowly. And me? She asked. What is my place in this performance? He turned. At my side, he said. not with a tray, with your head lifted. I will not hide you in corners while I speak of you. Her stomach clenched. They will not like it, she whispered. They have liked too many unworthy things for too long, he replied. I think it is time they disliked something honorable. Contessa Bianca will twist whatever you do, Lucia said. You know this. I know, he said. But this time, she will have to twist it in the open, not in shadows. She took his measure in silence. Very well, she said at last. If you mean to step into the fire, I will not watch from the window. I will stand where I have stood all year, in the place I chose, beside you. He exhaled, some of his tension easing. Then we are agreed, he said. Let the theatre begin. The invitations went out, some accepted out of curiosity, others out of habit, a few because they did not wish to be seen refusing. Bianca sent a polite reply, obscuring any hint of her true intentions under perfect handwriting. The day of the celebration dawned clear. The house buzzed, but not in the nervous, brittle way it had before that long-ago dinner. The decorations were simple. Flowers from the estate, white cloths, clean but unadorned. The silver gleamed, but Lucia refused to mix pieces this time. There were enough for everyone now. Marta fussed with Lucia's dress in the small room off the kitchen. I still do not understand, Marta muttered. Why does Carlo say you are not to serve tonight? If you do not serve, what do you do? Sit with them. Lucia looked down at the gown. It was new, but not extravagant. A soft blue, with a modest neckline and plain trim. Her hair was twisted up with care, a single ribbon threaded through. I do not know exactly what I will do, she admitted, except stand where the Count tells me. Marta sniffed. You look like trouble, she said. Beautiful trouble. They will not forget you tonight. I would be content if they forgot me, Lucia said, and only remembered what is said. That is not how people work, Marta replied. But no matter. Remember you have friends downstairs. If they throw stones with their eyes, we will catch them for you. Lucia smiled and squeezed her hand. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Not because of the dress, but because of the way she held herself. Not bent, not braced, straight, ready. The guests arrived as the sun began to soften. Carriages lined the drive. Voices filled the hall again. Lucia stayed out of sight for the first part, heart thumping. In the drawing room, the same faces reappeared like echoes. The Marchese, the Baron, Montori with his cane, Ricci with his careful smile. Bianca entered in a gown of deep green, jewels glittering at her throat. She glanced around, assessing. Lorenzo greeted them with courtesy, but without the old performance. He looked them in the eye. He did not apologize for the simplicity of the evening. Hard times, the Baron said lightly, gesturing at the more modest arrangement. Honest times, Lorenzo replied. They dined. The food was good, not excessive. The wine was excellent, praised even by those who wished to find fault. This is new, Ricci said, swirling his glass. New method, Lorenzo answered. Same hills. Perhaps you have found your true talent at last, Montori remarked. Management through fear. I gave up fear this year, Lorenzo said. It was too heavy. Bianca watched him closely. You seem changed, she said. Less frivolous, more fixed on some invisible point. On several points, he replied. They keep me occupied. And your maid? She asked, voice smooth. The one with the bold tongue. Is she still with you? She is, he said, without elaboration. Bianca's eyes narrowed a fraction. After the meal, instead of moving to the salon, Carlo directed the guests to the great hall. Chairs had been arranged facing a small raised step near the fireplace. It looked almost like a stage. What is this, Bardi? The Marchese asked, amused. Have you prepared a play? In a manner of speaking, Lorenzo said, though the script is very simple. The guests settled, curious. Some servants lined the walls more than usual. Workers from the vineyard stood at the back, clean and nervous in their best shirts. Ricci took a seat where he could see everything. Bianca sat in the front row, her fan moving slowly. Lorenzo climbed the low step and turned to face them all. The room quieted. Thank you for coming, he began. You have shared my table in years of ease. It is only right you see me now that the curtain has been pulled back. A faint ripple of discomfort spread. When my father died, he said, I inherited land, a house full of things, and a name that opened doors. I thought that was all there was to being a Bardi. Keep the gates polished, the wine flowing, the parties lively. Let the stewards and bankers handle the rest. Most of us do the same, the Baron muttered. That is not a defense, Lorenzo said calmly. It is a confession, he continued. In the past year, I learned that my estate was not a rock but a cracked jar. Money leaked while I danced. My comforts were built on habits I did not question. Some of those habits were wasteful. Others were unjust. Some reached back to decisions made before I was born. He saw Montori shift, restless. Among those decisions, Lorenzo said clearly, was one that concerns a family whose name you have heard today. Moretti. Several heads turned. Montori's grip tightened on his cane. Years ago, Lorenzo went on, my father, advised by men in this room, agreed to terms that took their land into our hands. Legal, yes. Profitable, yes. Also cruel. The Moretti vineyard was not destroyed by storms or laziness. It was strangled by contracts designed to favor those of us who already had more than enough. Silence thickened. Montori spoke up, his tone sharp. We did what was necessary, he said. You were a child then, Lorenzo. You do not understand the pressure we faced. I have read the papers, Lorenzo replied. I have listened to those who lived the other side of that necessity. I understand very well. We survived. They did not. You call it necessary. I call it convenient. Ricci cleared his throat. This is uncomfortable, he said, and not strictly relevant to your current solvency. It is relevant to my soul, Lorenzo said, which has more value to me now than my solvency, though thanks to recent changes, I may keep both. Nervous laughter flared and died. Bianca's fan moved faster. And what does this public self-accusation achieve? She asked. Do you hope we will applaud your conscience? No, he answered. I hope you will remember it when you sit in your own studies, signing your own papers. He paused, then glanced toward the side entrance. Carlo, he called. The butler opened the door. Lucia, he said quietly. She stepped through. A small stir ran through the room. The maid, the girl from the stories. But tonight she did not carry a tray. She wore her blue dress, her hair neatly arranged, her chin lifted. She walked to the space beside Lorenzo and stopped. Her heart thudded, but her face was calm. Bianca's eyes flashed. You bring your servant to address us? She asked. No, Lorenzo said. I bring the woman who saved my estate to stand where she belongs. A murmur rose. The Marchese almost choked. You cannot be serious, he said. A maid who saw what none of you saw, Lorenzo replied. At a dinner much like this one, I attempted to make a joke at her expense. I asked her in front of you how I should manage my fortune. You expected her to blush and stammer. Instead, she told me the truth about my waist, about my blind spots, about how I was letting my house bleed coins in 100 small cuts. Some of them remembered. Their faces showed it. At the time, you laughed, he continued. At her, at me. I wanted to be angry, at her at least, but I could not, because every word she spoke fit the numbers I had been too afraid to look at. He turned slightly toward Lucia. From that night, he said, Lucia Moretti has worked beside me. In secret at first. Not because she had anything to be ashamed of, but because I did. I was ashamed that I trusted her wisdom more than that of the men I paid. I was ashamed that I, who had been master of this house, needed a maid to hold up a mirror. Lorenzo, this is madness, Bianca hissed. You are making a spectacle of yourself. Perhaps, he said. If so, let this be the last performance in which I pretend to be something I am not. I am a man who has been ignorant and proud. I am also a man who has learned. And I learned from her. He faced the room fully again. The harvest we celebrate, he said, would not have filled our cellars without her. The terms the bank accepted were shaped by her clear view. The men in the fields work where they are most needed because she saw who earned their wages and who did not. When you drink this wine, you drink the result of her mind and courage as much as the work of my vines. Ricci shifted, uncomfortable but unable to argue. The numbers speak for themselves, he muttered. They do, Lorenzo agreed, and they speak her name. He gestured to Carlo. The deed, he said. Carlo stepped forward with a folded document on a tray. Lorenzo took it. This, he said, is my first attempt to address one wrong among many. It is a transfer of a portion of the South Hill land taken from the Moretti family under those hard terms, back into their hands. To Lucia or to her family as she directs. It is not enough. It cannot bring back what was lost. But it is a beginning. Gasps and whispers broke out. "You would strip your estate for her sake," Montori snapped. "I would trim it," Lorenzo said. "Healthier plants sometimes grow from careful pruning." He turned to Lucia and offered her the document. Her hands shook as she took it. "I accept," she said, voice thick. "On behalf of my father, who cannot stand here, on behalf of my mother, who will not believe this when I tell her, on behalf of 2 frightened boys who thought they had no place left in the world." Her eyes met his. "And on behalf of Lucia," she added softly, "who has spent many years hating her own name. This makes it a little easier to carry." Some of the vineyard workers at the back clapped, uncertainly at first, then with more conviction. A few of the nobles looked offended by the noise. Others looked moved in spite of themselves. Bianca's fan stilled. "You throw away land," she said. "You insult your father's decisions. You lift a servant up in front of us all. Is there any other foundation stone you wish to kick out from under your house tonight?" "Yes," Lorenzo said. He took a breath that seemed to come from somewhere deep. "I wish to end the lie that I can speak of this woman with such admiration and still treat her as if she were merely an employee," he said. Lucia's heart stopped. The air in the room thinned. "Lorenzo," she whispered. He looked at her. In his eyes she saw no hesitation. "You worried," he said to the room, "that there might be something improper between us, that my attention to her work meant something more. You were right, it does, it always has. What began as respect became something stronger. She knows this. I have not hidden it from her. But I have hidden it from you, because I was a coward." "You will ruin yourself," Bianca said sharply. "Think of what you're about to say." "For once," he replied, "I am thinking of what I must say, not what I should avoid. If ruin comes from honesty, let it come." He turned to Lucia fully now, as if they were the only 2 people in the hall. "Lucia," he said, and there was a tenderness in his voice that made several guests shift in their seats, unsure where to look. "I told you I would wait, that I would not ask until I had done what I could to set things right. I have not finished. I may never finish, but I have begun. The bank no longer owns my future. My conscience no longer kneels to my name. The land of your childhood is no longer held by hands that took it. There will always be more to do, but I cannot wait any longer to ask you this." Her throat closed. "Please," she whispered. "Not here, here," he said gently. "Because hiding you has been another form of wrong. I will not do it again." He went down on one knee, not theatrically but simply, as if his body had decided to match the humility of his heart. A wave of shock swept through the hall. The Baron made a strangled noise. Bianca's fan fell from her hand. Lorenzo did not look away from Lucia. "I love you," he said, not loudly, but every corner of the room heard it. "I love the girl who signed a paper thinking she was saving her father. I love the woman who walked into my house with nothing and refused to sell her dignity for comfort. I love the mind that has argued with me for a year and won more often than not. I love the courage that stands here now, even though every eye is on you." Tears blurred her vision. His face wavered, but his voice did not. "I cannot ask you to forget what my name once meant to yours," he said. "I cannot promise that the world will be kind. It may not. People like Bianca will talk. People like Montori will scoff. There will be whispers in salons and at markets." Bianca flinched at being named so plainly. "But I can promise this," Lorenzo went on. "If you agree to be my wife, I will never pretend you are less than my equal, in this house or outside it. I will listen to you when I would rather not. I will stand between you and unkindness when I can, and stand beside you when I cannot. I will not hide you. I will not be ashamed. And when they speak of Count Bardi in years to come, I hope they will say not that he saved his estate, but that he learned from his wife how to be a better man." The room held its breath. "Lucia Moretti," he said, the question laid bare at last. "Will you marry me?" For a heartbeat there was nothing. No sound, no movement, just her heartbeat drumming in her own ears. She saw everything at once, her father's rough hands guiding hers over numbers, her mother's tired smile, the empty house after they left. The first time she stepped into this estate, fearful and determined, the look on Lorenzo's face at that disastrous dinner, nights bent over ledgers, days in the fields, his hand warm beside hers on the stone wall, the weight of the deed now in her fingers. She thought of Bianca's cold words, of Montori's contempt, of all the doors that would close to them, and all the new ones they might build together instead. She took a step toward him. "Stand up," she whispered. He blinked, uncertain. "Is that a refusal?" he asked softly. "Stand up," she repeated. "If we are to speak as equals, you cannot be on your knees while I tremble." He rose slowly. They were very close now. She looked up at him, tears bright but unsmiling for the moment. "You ask much of me," she said. "You ask me to put my hand in the same hand that signed away my father's land. You ask me to walk into rooms where people will weigh my worth on scales I did not make. You ask me to carry your name with all its history." "I know," he said. "And yet," she went on, her voice becoming steadier, "you have given much already. You gave up comfort for honesty. You let a maid tell you what to do with your fortune. You stood here and said words no one of your station ever says in front of people like them." She gestured briefly to the stunned audience. "You returned soil to those who lost it," she said. "Not enough, but something. You have shown me again and again that you are willing to change not only for me, but for yourself. That matters more than land, more than money, more than gossip." A slow, incredulous hope dawned in his eyes. "Are you saying—" he began. "I am saying," she said, and now a smile broke through, radiant and trembling, "that it would be foolish of me to refuse the man I have been secretly arguing with in my heart all year. Yes, Lorenzo Bardi, I will marry you." The hall erupted, not in polite applause but in a mix of shocked exclamations, gasps, a few unmistakable cheers from the back where the vineyard workers stood. Some nobles clapped because they did not know what else to do. Others sat rigid, faces pale with disapproval. Marta, peering in from a side door, wiped her eyes with her apron hard enough to nearly scrub them out. Bianca rose to her feet, anger making her beautiful and sharp. "This is madness," she said. "You disgrace your name." Lorenzo turned his head, calm. "No," he said. "For the first time I honor it." She paled further. "You will regret this," she spat. "You will wake one day and realize you have thrown away your world for a peasant girl with clever words." "Then that will be the day I thank God I lost such a world," he replied, "and found a better one with her." She looked as if she might speak again, then thought better of it. With a snap of her fan, she collected her skirts and swept from the hall, followed by a few uncertain admirers. Montori shook his head slowly, as if at a foolish child. "You have no idea what you have done," he said. "I think I do," Lorenzo answered. "I have chosen my wife." He extended his hand to Lucia. She took it, fingers firm. Ricci watched them with a thoughtful expression. "As your banker," Ricci said, "I should advise caution in all large undertakings. This is perhaps the largest I have seen you attempt." "As my banker," Lorenzo replied, "you should note that I have just made a long-term investment in someone extremely skilled with numbers." A ripple of laughter broke through the tension, genuine this time. Ricci gave Lucia a shallow bow. "Then, madam," he said carefully, "allow me to wish you both prosperity. For purely selfish reasons, I hope your union proves as profitable as your partnership has been." "Thank you, Signor Ricci," Lucia said. Her voice did not shake. The celebration did not return to normal after that. It changed shape. Some guests left early, inventing excuses. Others stayed, curiosity overcoming their discomfort. Workers came forward one by one to offer awkward congratulations. Marta hugged Lucia in front of everyone, then scolded her for not telling her sooner. Carlo shook Lorenzo's hand with unusual force and gave Lucia a nod that, from him, was almost a bow. "I suppose I must learn to say my lady now," Carlo said dryly. "You will not," Lucia replied. "You will call me Lucia and tell me when I am wrong, as you always have." He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Then this house may yet stand," he said. The months that followed were busy in a different way. There were legal papers to sign, bans to be read, arrangements to be made. Some relatives refused to attend the wedding. Others sent cool acceptance, needing time to adjust to the idea. Lorenzo and Lucia faced it together, One afternoon, as they discussed the guest list, she paused over a blank space. "My mother," she said softly. "I must send someone to fetch her. She cannot read letters easily." "Then I will go," Lorenzo said at once. She stared. "To my aunt's small house?" she asked. "To sit at their table?" "Yes," he replied, "if they will have me." "They will be terrified," she said. "Then I will be gentle," he answered. He went. He sat at that small table, his tall frame almost too large for the chairs, and spoke with humility. Lucia's mother cried. Her aunt crossed herself 3 times. Her younger brothers stared, then slowly grinned when they realized he was not here to take anything. At the wedding, the church was fuller than expected. Some nobles stayed away entirely. Others watched from the back, curious. The front pews held workers, servants, merchants, a very proud martyr, a solemn Ricci, and tremulous and radiant, Lucia's mother. Lucia walked down the aisle in a simple gown. There was lace, yes, but not too much. She wore no heavy jewels, only a small ribbon from her childhood, and a modest necklace Lorenzo's mother had once worn. When she took his hand at the altar, her fingers did not tremble. The priest spoke of union, of forgiveness, of new beginnings. He did not mention class. He did not need to. When Lorenzo lifted her veil and kissed her, it was gentle, reverent. Yet there was a promise in it that made her knees weak and steadied her at the same time. They stepped out of the church to cheers and a rain of flower petals from the vineyard children. Someone began a rough song. The tune carried over the hills. Life did not become a fairy tale after that. Letters still arrived from the bank. The vines still sometimes sulked. Not every neighbor accepted the new countess easily. Some women refused to visit. Some men made jokes in private. Lucia heard most of it. She let it wash over her like rain she had expected. In the house, things changed more quickly. Wages were adjusted. Records were kept with new care. Workers were given a voice in how the fields were tended. Contracts were read aloud and explained before being signed. Lucia insisted on that. "No more blind signatures," she said. "Not for anyone." Sometimes she and Lorenzo argued, loudly, about money, about priorities, about how quickly to push change. The servants pretended not to listen, but they did. They also saw that the arguments ended not with slammed doors, but with shared bread at the same table, with apologies and laughter, and on quiet evenings with 2 figures walking side by side among the vines. One such evening, as the sun dipped low, they paused at the border of the land now bearing Lucia's family name again. A small wooden marker stood at the edge, freshly painted. "Moretti." "It seems unreal," she said softly, "to see it written there again." "It is only the beginning," Lorenzo said. "We will do more when we can." "You have already done more than I ever thought possible," she replied. "My father, I wish he could see this." "He sees it in you," Lorenzo said. "Every time you demand a proper contract, every time you refuse to be silenced." She smiled. "And your father?" she asked. "What would he say, seeing his son married to the daughter of the man whose land he took?" Lorenzo considered. "He would not understand at first," he said, "but I like to think that, given time, he might be proud that I chose a wife for her strength, not her dowry." They walked on. The air smelled faintly of earth cooling after heat. The stars began to prick through the sky. "Do you regret anything?" she asked quietly. He stopped and turned to her. "I regret what was done before us," he said. "I regret every season you spent thinking you were less because of what others took. I regret that I did not wake up sooner." "And now?" she asked. "Now," he said, "I am only grateful. For a maid who would not laugh when she was expected to. For a girl who signed a paper and still found the courage to trust again. For a woman who stands beside me and reminds me every day that land and titles are dust if we do not use them well." She reached up and touched his cheek. "And I," she said, "am grateful that a count once made a foolish joke and ended up changing both our lives." He laughed softly and drew her closer. "The best joke I ever made," he murmured. They stood there, a long moment, in the quiet field that had once been a wound and was now slowly becoming a place of healing. Around them the vines rustled in a soft breeze, leaves whispering secrets only they could hear. Lucia rested her head against his shoulder. "Do you remember," she asked, "what you said you wanted people to say years from now when they speak of Count Bardi?" "That I learned from my wife how to be a better man," he replied. "And do you think you have?" she teased gently. "I think," he said, kissing her hair, "that I am learning still, and that as long as you are here to argue with me, I will not forget what matters." "What matters?" she asked. He answered without hesitation. "Truth," he said. "Justice. Work honestly done. And love strong enough to stand in a room full of doubting eyes and still choose each other." She smiled against him, her hand slipping into his. "Then we are rich," she said, "whatever the bank balance says." He laughed quietly. "Yes," he said, "we are. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.